After my divorce, I couldn't trust anything. The future felt like a black box. No map, no guides, just silence. But what if that's not a bug? What if that's the path? Today, I'm talking with Daniel Barber, who helps people to navigate uncertainty using piano improvisation. Daniel, I'm glad you're here.
Thanks. It's great to be here, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
At first, I thought this is way too simple for something that complex. And then the more I sat with it, the more it made sense. Sometimes the best antidote to complexity is simplicity.
Yeah, and then in the middle of the simple, you start finding all kinds of little nooks and crannies that you didn't expect.
You said the piano became your companion after your second divorce, and it wasn't for performance, but survival. Can you take us back to that moment? What was going on and what brought you to the keys?
Sure, thanks. So yeah, I just to step back just another little bit. I did have some piano background as a kid. I played from the time I was about 4 till I was 11, mostly Mozart and Bach and stuff like that. Notes on the page. And then I took another couple of years in high school. So by the time I graduated from high school, I was pretty facile technically, and I could read pretty well. And but I pretty much put it down. I played on and off for the next 20, 25 years, but mostly off. I didn't really have much of a relationship with the piano. I would come back and play stuff that I'd played in high school, or I'd maybe learn something, but I would come back a couple of weeks, from time to time, and then put it, not play for a year or two. And that was the pace for about 20 years. And then my second marriage, we were having Mexican food one night, and I ordered my meat tacos, and we're starting in, and she looks at me and she goes, "I don't think this is going to work out." I was like, "You mean, and it was just sort of really unexpected, really not wanted, and really shocking and surprising. And she had already decided. There was no, let's talk about this, let's work. I mean, we did talk about it and we went to therapy and stuff, but she had already decided. And so the best way to answer your question where I remember one night lying in bed and I felt like I was just cast out into the middle of outer space with nothing to hang on to. There was nothing that I could rely on. My faith, the church, all my beliefs, everything was ineffective. And so I really just felt completely alone and completely cast out into nothingness. And I found that the only place that I could come and feel a little bit better for a while was to go to the piano and just start making sounds and playing stuff. Sometimes I would play things that I knew. There were two songs, actually, not really songs, but there were two things that I played for that 20 years that I could sort of rely on. I could do that. And then I had this song that I wrote when I was in college that was just sort of a little ballad. And I played that thing for very simple little song that I played a lot of different variations of during that. Those were the kind of the two things that I played for that 20 years. And so I would play that. But then sometimes I just needed to just let it out. So I would just just do that kind of stuff. And, I'd play that for 10 minutes and bawl my eyes out and then relax and play something nice and then go back to that. And I found that the part of me that felt alone, that part of me that felt like I was cast out into the universe, when I heard that stuff, that part of me didn't feel so alone anymore, because that part of me was hearing the sound of what that was feeling, and it was like, oh, the universe has some way of acknowledging that it's hearing how I'm feeling, and that's how that part of me felt. If that makes sense. There was the sort of the part that's the adult, or the part of that's just pure awareness that I know I'm in grief and stuff like that, but the part of me that was really in it and that was really feeling that part felt less alone when it heard the sounds of how I was feeling. And so that was really kind of deeply reassuring.
It's a very beautiful answer, and it's very encompassing. It takes you all the way from that moment of grief, of shock even, into a place of developing healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was like a lifeline. It was like there is possibility here. Yeah.
You said you got to a place where there was nothing you could count on, not even God, and I strongly relate to that. I felt very, very alone. What did that experience do to your sense of self?
Just exploded it, man. It just dissolved it. I mean, dissolved really is a better word than exploding. It just felt dissolved. Like it was the worst experience I think I've had. I spent some time in my college years, actually about almost exactly a year, in what I would really describe as probably clinical depression, that I never quite understood why that happened. It was this thing that sort of like happened overnight, and then it lasted for about a year, and then literally one day it was gone. It was like, and that's kind of another story, but that was pretty awful because I didn't know why it was happening, and I didn't know how long it was going to happen, and that was pretty awful. But this was just deep, deep, like, holy crap. I was in my early 50s. I think I was about 43 when that happened. I guess I was 43, and I just thought that I was past that sort of thing. I thought that wasn't going to happen again, and so it was pretty, I guess my sense of self was just really, I felt like I had to completely rebuild from scratch. Like there was nothing I knew that I could count on about myself as well. It's like I used to be pretty confident, and it's like, holy crap, I don't know what's true anymore. I don't know what I can count on. I don't know what I can trust about myself.
So, what replaced belief, at least to start out?
The thing that comes to mind is that, and I think maybe this is part of the reason that the piano helped, was that I could be in the moment. Like I could be in this moment and I'm okay. Like, it may suck and it may really sound, it may really feel awful, but I can be in this moment, and at least I don't know, it's like there was something about the experience of just coming into the moment that helped me to let go and release a little bit of all the other stuff that was going on in my head and my beliefs about stuff. So I guess it was maybe letting go of belief that was kind of the thing that helped.
Sounds like you're describing presence.
Mm-hmm.
You've called this work a low stakes lab for high stakes truth. And I like that. I love that. So, what sort of patterns show up when somebody starts improvising?
What a great question. What sort of patterns start showing up? So I guess the first answer to that is, wherever you go, there you are. And so, when any of us come to the piano, we bring our associations, we bring our history, we bring our beliefs, we bring our judgments. And I think one of the things that kind of immediately happens for a lot of people, and I'll speak for myself, is that there's these ideas that I have about what this is supposed to sound like, and what piano music or sounds at the piano are supposed to sound like. And it's my job to make it sound that way. And so I'm supposed to be able to make it sound like good piano music. And that's, of course, more true for people who have had some training or, think that they know some stuff at the piano. And so I'm supposed to do that, and I'm supposed to do it as well as I've ever done it. In fact, probably better than I've ever done it, blah, blah, blah. And so that's kind of the pattern that starts to kick in, is all these preconceptions about what this is supposed to be like. And so then what happens inevitably is that it's not going to be like that. There's some aspect of it that's not going to be like that. And so we start looking like the inner critic jumps up and goes, no, 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 not that, and then just starts intervening. And that's pretty much the initial experience for most people, is that they immediately, like within a few seconds, start facing that voice of the inner critic that jumps in and says, no, 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 not that, not that. And then the reason that I came up with that low stakes way of describing it is that it's just what's real about this is that it's this device that makes sounds, right? It's just this thing that makes sounds, and it's just doing what it does. And whatever ideas we bring to it and whatever thoughts that we have about it is purely stuff that's running around up here.
I'm finding one of the most difficult things to do is to create, because you do bring in all those ideas from here. So that act of creation is scary. What does a man discover when he watches himself create, especially when he's doing it in your format without any control or plan? Well, I guess there's control, but there's not necessarily a plan.
Yeah. I think I love your questions, Jeff. It seems to me the thing that comes to mind first about that is what a man gets to experience when he sits down and starts to create is his boyhood playfulness. He gets to sit there and go and just starts to play around and can get to the sort of once you get beyond that initial, oh, this is supposed to sound like piano music, and just get into like making sounds with it instead. It's super fun because there aren't really any rules other than what makes you happy and what makes, what you think sounds good. And once you step into that, then it just gets to be super fun. And you're like, oh, there's me. I remember me.
It's like a stripping down process, right? Like you're getting rid of that critic. He's still there. That critic is still there, but you're slowly pushing him to the side. And it's kind
Yeah.
of revealing something deeper in yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the process, you get to really explore how to reassign that critic to another role or to reassign it in a way that it can still be there and not interfere. Like one of the things that I do early on in the work with people, in fact, the first session with people, is that we have a little way of addressing that critic in a way that reassigns it and sort of shift your relationship with it. Because really, that part of us is really super, super, super valuable. And it's really something a therapist once said. In fact, during the therapist that my second wife and I saw as we're going through that process, that's the first time I heard this idea. She said, your critic is the thing that makes you brilliant. And so the task gets to be, okay, then how can I reorient my relationship to that part of me in such a way that it doesn't just keep getting in the way every time I just want to play and have a good time?
So what's one way a man can start doing that?
So the deeper answer to that question, without sort of just jumping to the piano, is to recognize that we have all these different parts of ourselves, including the inner critic, and to find a way to appreciate that all these different parts of ourselves are beautiful, that they have a contribution to make to our well-being, and that's what they're interested in, actually, is our well-being. Like that critic is there in some ways, at least, to help keep us safe, to help keep us from running out in the street in front of a bus, to help keep us from getting really embarrassed in front of our friends, or humiliated in front of the school, or, stuff like that. It's there to keep us from getting so far out of what is accepted by the social realm that we're in that we would be ostracized and exiled. And so it has a role, but at the piano, when you're by yourself and there's nobody around, it doesn't matter anything sounds like. And so to answer your question, a way to begin to do that is to start doing things that brings this critic voice up, so that it is active. And then we can say, hey, I really appreciate you, and I appreciate you for helping to keep me alive to this point. And now I'd really like to have a new experience. Some things that are kind of not going so great now, and I'd really like to make some changes. And I need your cooperation to let me have some new experiences so that I can grow. And you can be there. You can sit over in the corner and watch, and you can let me know if you're concerned about something, and I'll listen. But I'm not, we're going to have a different kind of relationship going forward.
I love that. It's almost assigning it a role as opposed to letting it run your life.
Perfectly, beautifully put. Yeah.
So you've created your program's called Sound Yourself. Can you walk us through how that works and how it helps move people from insight to integration?
Sure. So I think that this is the underlying kind of philosophy of this. I think that all living things, right from one-celled organisms on up, have three questions to address on an ongoing basis. The first one is, what is happening now? So as soon as we're launched out into physicality, right, we're like, holy, what the fuck is going on here? And that comprises all of, observational science and, all of everything we've ever done to try to assess what's going on in the world around us. The second question is, who am I now? So who am I in the midst of this? It's like there's all that, but like who am I? How am I? How do I fit into all of this? And of course, that's all of psychology and philosophy and phenomenology and all the existentialness. Right? And then the third question is, what do I do now? So how do I take all the information that I can tell about the environment, all of history, all of everything that I've taken in up to this point, and along with who I perceive myself to be, and then it's time. It's like I got to make a decision. Do I sign up for grad school? Do I leave this job? Do I go get a peanut butter sandwich? Do I say this thing to you next? It's like we're always in a particular moment, and sometimes we decide to do nothing and just listen some more, and sometimes we decide to read, and sometimes we decide to go for a run, but we're always needing to make a decision. And so one of the things that I think is cool about this practice is that it incorporates via improvisation. What I've learned as a professional musician is that one of the first things that you got to do as a musician is to listen to what's going on with the rest of the band. If you're playing with a band, it's like what's happening. And so you're listening first. That's the way to answer that first question, is to listen or simply attend to what's happening. And then the next question is to feel. The way to answer that second question is to feel deeply. It's like, who am I in this moment? Who am I now? What am I aware of? And what seems to be true in me right now? And so that sort of incorporates the sense that we get when we're listening to something and we notice our reaction to it, or we notice that we're feeling resonant with the thing, or we're feeling repelled by the thing. We're assessing our own experience and identity in the context of that moment, in the context of that environment, and then deciding what to do. Do I run toward it? Do I chase the squirrel for a meal? Do I run from the tiger? Do I play this chord to, it's like, and so it's this ongoing mindfulness work, this ongoing presence work, along with the ongoing need to make decisions about what to do. So we're being as present as possible to what's happening and accepting as much as possible what's happening, but also going, okay, now what am I going to do? And so that's kind of, and in the process of doing that, in this, again, very low stakes environment, you're watching yourself. The piano becomes this mirror of you, because the piano's not doing anything that you're not telling it to do. And so it's just feeding back to you, yourself, and then you get to notice how your own mind and body responds in situations.
So I used to play, but I haven't played in literally over 20 years at this point. And you're making a good case for me to get back into it.
Great. Good for me. Good for you.
How would you get started with somebody like me, or somebody who's never even touched a piano?
Well, that's really cool. I'm excited to hear that, Jeff.
I played piano, and I don't know if you have it where you were, Royal Conservatory. Classical music.
Yeah. So notes on the page and doing it really well, and as
very precise.
Yes.
That's what I think I didn't like about it.
Really? Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that a lot, for sure. And so how about if I answer that question for someone like you, and also for people who have never played before? Because it does work for in both cases. It's a little bit different in both cases. And actually, I'll just say it can be a little bit harder for folks like you who have a lot of experience with playing things really precisely, because this is so different. And so it can be, you, and the joy for you is that you get to have a completely different kind of experience with the piano. You get to really step into that other side of things, which can be super fun. And if you have technical capacity and technical ability already because of that, and already have some sense of how the piano is organized and things like that, that can come in handy. It's like that bringing in that critic again. It can come in a little bit later down the road, and it can really help you. It can be a real ally then with you down the road.
So how would somebody, if they haven't played before, can you maybe demo for us how they would get started?
Sure. So I have a way of, you mind if I bring up I've got a little visual here. I can show you the keyboard. Let's see.
Please.
Here. It's that one. There we go. So I have a way of showing people who have never played before how to play in any key that you can learn in an hour. And so you don't have to have ever seen a piano before. With at the end of an hour, and some people get it in 30 minutes, a way of seeing the keyboard so that you can immediately start playing, and just to be able to see any of the keys on the keyboard so that you can know which 7 notes to play that will at least sound decent together. Because what you need to be able to do is to begin playing in a way that you can enjoy it enough, so that you'll do it again. You'll come back tomorrow. And because if you don't know that, then you're kind of faced with either just playing a bunch of gnarliness, which sometimes is exactly what you want to play, but not always. And it can get a little bit boring if that's all you're doing is just playing the noise. And so this approach that I have, I call it the 12 keys with ease. And it's it's something that occurred to me actually after I started teaching. And it was like, oh my gosh, I could show people how to play in any key using this particular kind of visual approach that occurred to me. And then I pretty quickly realized that I could show people that within an hour, and then they could just start in. And I started this that occurred to me around 2014. And so I've had several people, I've taught this to quite a few people, dozens of people since then. And I've had people that just did that one lesson, and that's all they ever did, and they've just been playing and enjoying playing ever since. And so it's just kind of a way to get over that initial hurdle.
Yeah, I look at that and I see 88 keys, and that's infinite permutations and combinations, and that just stresses me out.
Yeah.
So having
Yeah.
that little bit of entry point would help.
Yeah. Yeah. It just helps to simplify the whole process.
What I like about your process is that it's not flashy. It's very quiet and spacious. What do you think it is about simplicity that reaches those parts that nothing else touches?
So there's a couple of things about that. One is the universally profound power of sound. Sound, I'm not aware of any creation stories ever through the course of human history that don't involve the making of sound. So, and God said, some that say like at the beginning of the universe, she sang, or somebody played a lyre, or, somebody struck a chord or said something, and so it was, the creation has always been described as this thing that begins with sound. And so, if I do that, it's running through your ears and it's shaking cells in your body and it's doing stuff. And one of the things that I think is cool about that in terms of your question around simplicity is that no matter what I'm experiencing, if I'm in grief or if I'm in confusion, like what the hell am I going to do? How am I going to move forward? It's so easy to take an instrument like this that has such a huge dynamic range, not only just the pitches, but the loudnesses and stuff, and create a sound that you can feel soothed by, and that you can feel supported by and held by. And you can just sit there and close your eyes and just do something like that, super, super simple, and just sit there and do that for 10 minutes, and really feel better at the end.
Just when you were playing those bottom notes, the oscillation back and forth, it felt like it was taking me somewhere. Like I felt like if I just sat with that long enough, it would bring me where I needed to go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think, this is my thinking, but I think that all of us have this innate musical sense in us. I think that's just part of how we're built. And so to be able to make sounds that resonate for you, and like if you were doing this, you might hear that and you might be inclined to do something in this part of the keyboard or up here, it's like, but to be able to listen to your own internal suggestion maker, it's like, ooh, let's do this. Just start playing with it, and listening to your own, whatever that source of creative ideas is, you start to nurture that relationship with your own inspirational source. and then try it out, and you get instant feedback and go, no, that wasn't quite it. No, let's do this instead. And it's not like painting or something where you'd have to like scrap the whole, if you don't like it, you'd have to scrap the whole page and pull out a new piece of paper. You know, you just change it just like that.
What are some things your clients learn, not just about music, but about themselves?
A lot of different kinds of things. One of the big ones, I think, is the shift from kind of being reactive to being more thoughtful and more responsive. And so this is a great way to start to realize, oh, I have a choice in what I'm doing here. And sometimes what'll happen is people will be sitting there playing, and they'll do this thing and think you're supposed to play a bunch of notes, and they'll do that. And sometimes, somebody will play something that's kind of sounds a little bit like not that awful, but, sometimes. And I'll say, when they're finished, it's like, so were you trying to play music? And not as an insult, but like, is that what you were trying to do? Were you trying to play music? And the people that have worked with me long enough will say, yeah, I was. It's like, yeah, I was trying to play. Instead of just playing sound, there's a quantum difference between trying to play something that is good, that somebody out there will think is good, or something in here will think is good, right? There's a big difference between trying to play something that you think is good, and on the other, instead of just playing and listening and following and playing sounds that you like, and being drawn to play something that you don't really care if it's good. You just want it to be good for like you right now. And that is something that can be a huge learning about ourselves. Is like, oh yeah, I've been playing to other people for all my life, haven't I?
That's deep. That's good. You've said this work changes how you show up in relationships. How have you found that play out in real life?
I have found, and I'll speak for myself for the moment, and then talk about some client experiences too. But for me, I have found that, let me start here. I was the band leader at a church in Asheville, North Carolina called Jubilee for 20 years. And I was always playing to, if not to impress people, at least to not embarrass myself. That was the goal, is to survive, to survive the day. And at one point, and so I always listened to Oscar Peterson a lot when I was a kid. And so I was always like thinking that to do something good, it had to involve a whole lot of notes, and, that's just what sounded good to me. And so I tried to do that. And then at one point along the way, I remember one day we were playing some song, and it was like my time to solo. And I just and instead of trying to be flashy or play something that people would think was good, I just started playing things that I could control, that I was in charge. I could do it well, and it could be pretty, it could be beautiful. And it sounded amazing to me, and it seemed to sound good to everybody else. It was like people just kind of went, whoa, that was really great. And it was like, I played about a quarter of the notes that I usually play, but it sounded good. By that, I mean, it was appealing. It was beautiful. It was me. And I think that is kind of the way that I want to answer your question. It's like, it has helped me to be more genuine and more authentic and less presumptuous. What's the word? Affected. I'm okay. It's okay to just be who I am right now in this moment.
I love that.
I do too.
I could tell.
I spent a lot of my life being really kind of having this low-level anxiety that I just kind of lived with all my life and didn't really.
Yeah, that resonates. And being authentic I was saying the other day, it feels very freeing, and it's just easier.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's just so much easier. Like there's no expectation.
Yeah. So if I can loop this conversation back to where you were when you were sitting at that table ordering your meat taco, and even the months following that, you had no partner, no plan, no certainty. How do you speak to that guy from where you are now? What would you offer him?
It seems like the thing that I think the thing that I needed the most is that this isn't the end of the story. It's like, this isn't the end of the story. This could even be, it's not like you can kind of believe in that moment that things will be okay, but something along the lines of the level and the amount of things that you don't know is so much more than what you think you know, and to just let that be, let that be. Like whatever it is that you're thinking, whatever it is that you feel is a tiny fraction of the story.
That's a hard thing to hear in the moment, but that's truth.
Yeah. Yeah, and one way to, I guess it occurs to me, I love this conversation so in so many ways, is to remember how you felt when you were 12 on some day when you were out playing a little league game, or the first time you had a relationship with someone or something. It's like in the same way that the past, that there's a truth there, that there's an analogous relationship with the future that we have no idea about, and that it's possible that the future could really suck, and it's also possible that the future could be really amazing, and we simply don't know. And to kind of let that unknownness be a good thing, like let that be, because it simply is.
Mm-hmm.
And so to allow for the possibility that that's actually a really good thing. And this is a great metaphor for that, because I don't know what's going to happen in 10 seconds, and then something really cool can kind of emerge, and you're like, oh wow, and then it's this way of learning that, oh yeah, there are things that can be really cool that I had no idea about.
I love that. In this journey, sorry, let me start that again. Now that you've gone through this journey, what's the one thing you're most grateful?
Still being here, man. still being here. I mean, it's so great that that what I just said about there's possibility. I'm so grateful that I didn't do some of the things that I wish I had done at the time that might have made it impossible for me to be here now. Because I'm so grateful that there's possibility ahead for me that wouldn't be if I had done something stupid. Not only just sort of like calling it all off, but kind of giving up on life and like turning into a bitter person, or just I've said things to people that I really regret, but I'm glad that I never became really genuinely hateful. I think that would just it's not fun. It's just not fun, and it's not expansive, and it's not. I mean, I want to take whatever time I have left and spend as much of it in joy as possible. It's more fun.
Yeah. Well, thanks for your time, Daniel. This was Daniel Barber. He's a man who didn't just find music, but learned how to let it find him. And what I took from this conversation is that healing doesn't always come through fire or pain. Sometimes it comes through stillness. And you don't have to know what's coming next to take the next step. You need to listen to your breath, to your body, and the keys under your fingers, and play what's true. If this conversation opens something in you, share it with someone who's in their own unknown. And thanks for listening.